He shared his last chocolate bar with the poor alien girl, unaware she was. The twin sons of Nexus Prime beat down mercilessly on Clark Davis's broad shoulders as he made his way through the winding streets of Sandspire City. The settlement's architecture was a bizarre fusion of ancient Earth's Middle Eastern aesthetic and alien bioorganic forms, sweeping curves of sand-colored material that seemed to have grown rather than been built. "Damn heat," he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. The negotiations with the local merchant guild had dragged on longer than expected, and now he was stuck walking back during peak heat. His military-grade environmental suit helped, but even it had its limits. The streets were mostly deserted. Any sane being was inside during these hours, which made the lone figure huddled in the shadow of a massive building all the more striking. As Clark drew closer, he realized it was a woman, or at least a female humanoid. Her skin had an ethereal, pale blue tint that seemed to shimmer in the harsh sunlight, and her silvery hair fell in disheveled waves around her face. She wore simple, worn clothing that had seen better days, but there was something about her bearing that caught his attention. Even in apparent distress, she held herself with an innate grace that seemed at odds with her current situation. When she looked up at his approach, Clark found himself caught in the most striking eyes he'd ever seen. They were like liquid mercury filled with both defiance and curiosity. Her refined features, despite being streaked with dust, held an almost aristocratic quality. Without thinking, Clark reached into his pocket and pulled out his last bar of Sustaina Quantum, a specialized chocolate-like nutrient bar that could keep a person going for days. They were worth their weight in precious metals out here on the frontier. "Here," he said, holding it out to her. The woman stared at the offering as if it might bite her. "People don't just give away food in places like this," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality despite her suspicious tone. Clark shrugged, giving her a small smile. "Humans know what it's like to live through hard times. That's why, if we can, we help those who have it worse." He placed the bar next to her and turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "Wait, what's your name?" "Clark Davis," he replied over his shoulder. "Take care of yourself." As he walked away, he missed the calculating look that crossed her face, or the way she tucked the nutrient bar carefully into a hidden pocket. 3 days later, Clark stood in the grand reception hall of the Sovereign's Palace, trying not to fidget in his formal diplomatic attire. The negotiations he'd been handling for the Earth Trade Federation had escalated beyond the Merchant Guild level, and now he found himself face to face with the system's ruler. The hall was a masterpiece of alien architecture, with sweeping golden arches that seemed to defy gravity and walls inlaid with bioluminescent crystals that pulsed with gentle light. Ancient artifacts from a dozen worlds were displayed in transparent cases, each one worth more than Clark would earn in a lifetime. "Ah, Ambassador Davis," a deep voice called out. "Welcome to my humble home." Clark turned to face Sovereign Thexnar, a tall, imposing figure in elaborate robes. But it was the person standing next to him that made Clark's jaw drop. There, dressed in a flowing gown that seemed to be woven from starlight itself, was the woman from the street. Gone was the dust and dishevelment. She now radiated an aura of power and sophistication that made his breath catch. "May I introduce my daughter, Princess Lenara," the Sovereign said, clearly amused by Clark's reaction. "Though I believe you two have already met." Clark felt his face heat up as the princess gave him a sly smile. "Indeed we have, Father. The ambassador was kind enough to share his last nutrient bar with me the other day. Clark eloquently responded, his usual diplomatic polish deserting him entirely. "Come," Sovereign Thexnar said. "Let us discuss trade agreements over dinner. I believe my daughter has some interesting insights into human generosity that she'd like to share." As they followed the Sovereign deeper into the palace, Princess Lenara fell into step beside Clark. "That chocolate bar," she whispered, "was quite delicious. Perhaps we could discuss a more permanent trade arrangement." The look she gave him left little doubt she wasn't talking about official diplomatic channels. Clark had a feeling his life was about to get a lot more complicated and interesting. The following days at the palace became an intricate dance of diplomacy and desire. Clark found himself spending more time in cultural exchange meetings with Princess Lenara than in actual trade negotiations. Not that anyone seemed to mind, least of all the sovereign, who watched their interactions with barely concealed amusement. "Tell me more about Earth customs," Lenara would say, her mercury eyes sparkling with genuine curiosity as they walked him through the palace's crystalline gardens. The bioluminescent flowers cast ever-changing patterns of light across her pale blue skin, making her seem almost ethereal. "What would you like to know?" Clark asked, trying to maintain his diplomatic composure despite being acutely aware of how close she walked beside him. "Your courtship rituals," she replied without hesitation. "They seem so different from ours." Clark nearly tripped over his own feet. "I'm not sure I'm qualified to give a comprehensive overview of human dating practices. Then perhaps a practical demonstration?" The playful lilt in her voice made his heart race. Their cultural exchanges became more frequent and increasingly intimate. Lenara was fascinated by human traditions, but Clark quickly realized she was equally interested in teaching him about her own culture. "In our society," she explained one evening, as they sat in her private study, surrounded by ancient texts and holographic star charts, "arranged marriages are common among nobility. But there is also an old tradition called the heart's choice." Clark raised an eyebrow. "Sounds romantic." "It is." She moved closer, her silver hair brushing against his arm. "When a noble finds someone they truly desire, they can invoke this right. It supersedes all other arrangements." The implications hung heavy in the air between them. Their conversations often strayed into dangerous territory, testing the boundaries between diplomatic relations and personal desire. Lenara seemed to delight in pushing those boundaries, finding excuses to touch him during their discussions, a hand on his arm while explaining a point, fingers brushing as she passed him ancient artifacts to examine. During a private dinner in her chambers, another cultural exchange, she introduced him to traditional Nexian wine. The iridescent liquid seemed to dance with its own inner light. "Be careful," she warned, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "It affects humans differently." The wine tasted like stardust in summer storms, and it made his skin hypersensitive to every slight touch. When Lenara's fingers traced patterns on his palm while explaining the significance of traditional Nexian handreading, the sensation sent electricity through his entire body. "Your lifeline is fascinating," she murmured, leaning close enough that he could feel her breath on his neck. "It suggests a destiny intertwined with forces beyond your world." "Does it now?" His voice was rougher than intended. Her fingers continued their exploration. "And this line here, it speaks of passion. Deep, consuming passion." The tension between them grew with each passing day, a magnetic pull that became increasingly difficult to resist. Their diplomatic discussions became laden with double meanings, every word carrying undertones of desire. One afternoon, while showing him the palace's ancient library, Lenara suddenly turned to face him. "You know, I've been thinking about that chocolate bar." "Have you?" Clark managed, distracted by how the light played across her features. "Yes, about what it represents." She stepped closer. "Humans are fascinating creatures. You give freely without calculation. It's intoxicating." "We're not all like that," he said, backing up until he felt the solid presence of a bookshelf behind him. "But you are." Her mercury eyes seemed to see right through him. "You gave your last nutrient bar to a stranger, expecting nothing in return. Do you know how rare that is in our world?" "I'm beginning to understand," he replied, his heart thundering in his chest as she closed the remaining distance between them. "I want to understand more," she whispered, "about humans, about you." The kiss, when it came, felt inevitable. Like gravity, like the pull of twin suns, her lips were cool against his, tasting of stardust and possibility. Time seemed to stop, the universe narrowing to just this moment, just them. When they finally parted, both breathing heavily, Lenara's eyes had darkened to molten silver. "That was educational," she said with a small smile. "Just part of our cultural exchange program," Clark replied, trying to regain his composure. She laughed, the sound like crystal chimes in the wind. "Then I believe we need many more lessons." Their relationship evolved naturally after that. Passionate moments stolen between diplomatic meetings, secret touches during state dinners, heated glances across crowded rooms. The palace staff pretended not to notice when the princess's cultural exchange sessions with the human ambassador ran late into the night. The sovereign, for his part, seemed more amused than concerned. "Humans," he remarked to his advisors, "have such interesting ways of conducting diplomacy. The ancient traditions of Nexian courtship proved to be as complex as they were beautiful. When Clark formally declared his intention to court Princess Lenara through the Heart's Choice ritual, the entire palace erupted into a flurry of activity. "The path of 7 stars," Lenara explained one evening, in the palace's astronomical observatory, where holographic constellations danced around them. Each star represents a trial that proves the suitor's worth. Clark watched as she manipulated the stellar display, creating a pattern of 7 brilliant points of light. "And I have to complete all of them?" "Only if you wish to claim me as your mate," she replied with a sultry smile that made his pulse quicken. "Though I must warn you, no human has ever attempted these trials." The first trial, the Star of Wisdom, required Clark to demonstrate his knowledge of Nexian culture and history. Hours spent in the library with Lenara had prepared him well, though her tendency to reward correct answers with increasingly intimate gestures made studying rather challenging. "You're distracting me," he complained as her fingers traced patterns on his neck during a particularly complex discussion of Nexian dynastic succession. "Consider it motivation," she purred. "Besides, this is nothing compared to what awaits when you complete all 7 trials." The Star of Strength proved more physically demanding. Traditional Nexian combat techniques relied heavily on their natural ability to sense electromagnetic fields, something humans distinctly lacked. Clark had to adapt, developing new strategies that showcased humanity's remarkable adaptability. "Fascinating," murmured High Marshal Kexthor after Clark successfully completed the combat trial. "He compensates for his biological limitations with extraordinary tactical thinking." The Star of Endurance tested his stamina in the harsh Nexian environment. For 3 days, he traversed the desert beyond the city, surviving on minimal resources, though he did carry a certain chocolate bar wrapper as a token of luck. Each trial brought them closer, their passion growing alongside their deepening emotional connection. The palace buzzed with gossip about the human who dared to court their princess, but the tone was more admiring than scandalized. "Your species continues to surprise us," Sovereign Thexnar remarked during a private audience. "When my daughter first told me of the stranger who gave away his last nutrient bar, I thought her fascination would pass. Now I begin to understand what she sees in you." The Star of Spirit required Clark to undergo a traditional Nexian bonding ritual, opening his mind to their unique form of empathic connection. The experience was overwhelming, suddenly feeling the electromagnetic pulses that were as natural to Nexians as breathing. But it was the sensation of Lenara's presence in his mind that truly stunned him. Her essence felt like starlight and desert winds, ancient wisdom and playful desire, all wrapped into one intoxicating package. "Now you understand," she whispered, both aloud and in his mind. "This is how my people truly connect." The Star of Devotion tested not just his commitment to Lenara, but his understanding of Nexian partnership bonds. He learned that their concept of marriage went far beyond Earth's traditions. It was a melding of souls as much as bodies. "Your human custom seems so limited in comparison," Lenara teased as they practiced the intricate movements of the traditional bonding dance. Their bodies moved in perfect synchronization, the air between them charged with unspoken promises. "We make up for it in other ways," Clark replied, pulling her closer than the formal dance strictly required. The Star of Creation challenged him to contribute something meaningful to Nexian society. Drawing on his diplomatic experience in Earth's history, Clark proposed new trade routes that would help their desert world flourish. Finally came the Star of Unity, the most intimate trial of all. It required the couple to demonstrate their compatibility on all levels, mental, spiritual, and physical. The ancient ceremony took place in the sacred chamber, where bioluminescent crystals pulsed in rhythm with their heartbeats. "Are you nervous?" Lenara asked as they prepared for the final ritual, her mercury eyes glowing with anticipation. "About binding my soul to an alien princess through an ancient ceremony that no human has ever attempted." Clark smiled. Not at all." The ritual itself was a blur of sensation and emotion. Their empathic connection established during the spirit trial deepened to unprecedented levels. Every touch, every breath, every heartbeat resonated between them. When it was over, they lay entwined in the sacred chamber, their bodies cooling in the desert air while their minds remained intimately connected. "I can still taste that chocolate bar, you know," Lenara murmured against his chest. In your memories. The sweetness of it, yes, but more than that, the kindness behind the gesture. Who would have thought that one small act of kindness would lead to all this? Clark stroked her silvery hair, marveling at how the strands seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. The ancient texts speak of destiny, she replied, of souls meant to find each other across the vast expanse of space and time. Perhaps that chocolate bar was just the universe's way of bringing us together. News of the successful completion of the Seven Stars trials spread across Nexian society like wildfire. Clark found himself thrust into an entirely new role, no longer just Earth's ambassador, but the first human consort to Nexian royalty. The transition brought both privileges and challenges that no diplomatic training could have prepared him for. The royal consort's chambers have been prepared, announced High Chamberlain Mextral, leading them through a wing of the palace Clark had never seen before. The architecture here was even more organic, the walls seeming to pulse with a faint bioluminescence that responded to their presence. Our chambers, Linera corrected, her fingers intertwined with Clark's. Through their newly forged mental bond, he could feel her satisfaction at the word "our." The suite was a masterpiece of Nexian design, seamlessly blending their two cultures. Traditional Earth furnishings sat comfortably alongside living crystal formations that served as both art and functional pieces. A terrace overlooked both the sprawling city and the endless desert beyond, the twin suns casting everything in a warm, golden glow. I had them include some Earth comforts, Linara said, gesturing to a familiar-looking device in one corner, including that coffee maker you're so fond of. Clark pulled her close, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. You're amazing. You know that. Perhaps you should show me just how amazing you think I am, she purred, her mercury eyes darkening with desire. Their passionate celebration of their new quarters was interrupted by a diplomatic summons. The Earth Trade Federation had, unsurprisingly, taken great interest in one of their ambassadors becoming intimately involved with alien royalty. They're worried about divided loyalties, Clark explained later as they prepared for bed, the night air cool against their skin. Linara traced patterns on his chest, her touch sending shivers through their shared bond. And what do you think? I think they're underestimating humanity's capacity for adaptation and love. The following weeks were a whirlwind of diplomatic functions, royal duties, and intimate moments stolen between responsibilities. Clark found himself learning the intricacies of Nexian court politics, while Linera delighted in shocking the more conservative members of society with her very human displays of affection. During one particularly stuffy state dinner, she caused quite a stir by feeding Clark pieces of traditional Nexian delicacies by hand, a gesture that held far more intimate connotations in their society than in human culture. You're doing that on purpose, he accused her mentally, even as he accepted another morsel from her fingers. Her mental laughter sparkled through their bond. Perhaps I enjoy watching them squirm. Besides, shouldn't they get used to how humans express affection? Their nights were filled with passion and discovery, each encounter deepening their understanding of each other's cultures and bodies. The empathic bond added layers of sensation that Clark had never imagined possible, while his human approach to intimacy fascinated and delighted Linara. Your species is so physically oriented, she mused one night, tracing the line of his jaw. We Nexians tend to focus on the mental aspects of joining, but this is extraordinary, Clark grinned. Just wait until I introduce you to more Earth customs. Ever heard of dancing in the rain? The suggestion earned him a playful swat, followed by a much more enjoyable form of retaliation. Their union began affecting policy as well. Trade negotiations between Earth and Nexus Prime took on new dimensions as both sides sought to understand each other better. Clark found himself acting as a bridge between cultures, helping each side see the other's perspective. You've changed how we view humans, Sovereign Thexnar admitted during a private meeting. That simple act of sharing food with a stranger, it spoke volumes about your species' capacity for compassion. We try our best, Clark replied modestly. The Sovereign's mercury eyes, so like his daughter's, twinkled with amusement. Indeed, though I must ask him, do you have any more of that chocolate? My daughter seems quite fond of it. Life settled into a new rhythm, one that balanced diplomatic duties with personal pleasure. Clark and Linara found ways to merge their cultures both publicly and privately, creating something entirely new into the process. One evening, as they watched the twin suns set from their terrace, Lenora presented Clark with a small package wrapped in shimmering crystal paper. "What's this?" he asked, carefully unwrapping it. Inside was a familiar-looking bar, but made of Nexian materials and infused with their unique flavors. "I had our artisans recreate your Earth chocolate," she explained. "Consider it a reminder of how this all began." Clark pulled her close, remembering that fateful day in the street. Who would have thought a chocolate bar could lead to all this? "I did," she whispered against his lips. "The moment you offered it to me, I knew you were different. Special." Their kiss tasted of chocolate and stardust, of Earth and Nexus Prime combined. The diplomatic crisis erupted like a sandstorm, sudden, fierce, and all-consuming. A rival alien federation, the Kraxon Consortium, had issued an ultimatum. Either Nexus Prime would sever all ties with Earth, or face economic sanctions that would cripple their already resource-strained world. "They're afraid," Clark observed, pacing their private chambers, while Lenara watched from their lounging area. "Our partnership is shifting the balance of power in this sector." "It's more than that," Lenara replied, her mercury eyes tracking his movement. "They fear what we represent. The idea that different species can not only coexist but thrive together." Through their empathic bond, Clark could feel her concern tinged with determination. The connection had grown stronger over time, allowing them to share not just emotions, but complete thoughts when in close proximity. "Your father's called an emergency council meeting," he said, finally settling beside her. The moment he sat down, she curled against him, her cool skin a balm against his human warmth. She hummed, nuzzling his neck. "We have 2 hours before then. Any suggestions on how to relieve some tension?" Their passionate interlude left them both more relaxed and clear-headed, their bond humming with shared satisfaction and renewed purpose. As they dressed for the council meeting, Lenara paused while fastening Clark's formal robes, a task she insisted on performing herself, claiming it was tradition. "Remember when you found me in the street?" she asked, her fingers lingering on his chest. "How could I forget? It was the best diplomatic move I never intended to make." She smiled, but her eyes remained serious. "You showed me something that day, something the Kraxon Consortium could never understand. The true strength of humanity isn't in your technology or your resources. It's in your capacity for kindness, even when it costs you something precious." The council chamber was packed with Nexian nobility and Earth representatives when they arrived. Sovereign Thexnar sat upon his crystalline throne, his expression grave as he surveyed the assembled dignitaries. "The Kraxon ultimatum expires in 3 standard days," he announced. "We must decide our course of action." The debate that followed was heated. Some argued for capitulation, citing Nexus Prime's vulnerability. Others pushed for defiance, but had few practical solutions for surviving the sanctions. Clark stood, drawing all eyes to him. "What if we gave them something they want more than our submission? And what would that be, human?" demanded one of the more conservative council members. "Chocolate," Clark replied with a straight face. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs, but Lenara's mental laughter sparkled through their bond. She understood immediately. "Not just chocolate," Clark continued, "but what it represents. Earth's agricultural techniques, adapted for harsh environments. Our water reclamation technology, our solar energy systems, everything that could help transform resource-poor worlds into thriving ones." "The Kraxon worlds are even more barren than ours," Lenara added, rising to stand beside him. "They bully because they're desperate. But what if we offered partnership instead of submission?" Through their bond, Clark felt her pride and love wash over him. He sent back his own surge of affection, making her lips quirk in a small smile. "A bold proposal," Sovereign Thexnar mused, "but how can we trust them to honor such an agreement?" "Because we'll make it impossible for them to refuse," Clark said. "We'll demonstrate our capabilities by transforming a small portion of their most barren world. Show them what's possible when species work together instead of against each other." The council chambers buzzed with discussion. Through their bond, Clark and Lenara coordinated their responses to questions and concerns, their mental synchronization allowing them to present a united front that was both impressive and slightly unnerving to observers. Later that night, as they celebrated their diplomatic victory in private, Lenara traced the lines of Clark's face with tender fingers. "You continue to amaze me," she murmured. using the very thing that brought us together to solve an interstellar crisis. Well, that chocolate bar did work wonders for me once before, he replied, capturing her wandering hands and bringing them to his lips, though I got far more than I bargained for that day. As did I, she purred, her skin beginning to glow with the bioluminescence that indicated intense emotion among her people. Perhaps we should celebrate by recreating some of our more memorable moments. Their passionate celebration was interrupted by an urgent communication. The Kraxan Consortium had responded to their proposal. They were willing to negotiate. "See?" Lenara said, not bothering to move from her position sprawled across Clark's chest. "Humans really do know how to make everything better. Even diplomatic crises, especially those." She propped herself up to look at him, her mercury eyes glowing in the darkness. "You know what this means, don't you? We'll need to travel to the Kraxan worlds together." Clark grinned, pulling her back down to him. "As long as I have you and a supply of chocolate, I think we can handle anything the galaxy throws at us." The successful resolution of the Kraxan crisis catapulted Clark and Lenara into the spotlight of galactic politics. Their unique partnership became a symbol of successful interspecies cooperation, leading to increased responsibilities and new challenges, both political and personal. "The Galactic Council has requested our presence," Clark announced one morning, scrolling through diplomatic communications on their chamber's holographic display. "Apparently, we're being considered for appointment as special envoys for interspecies relations." Lenara stretched languorously on their bed, her pale blue skin seeming to shimmer in the early morning light. And here I was, hoping we could spend the day testing that new anti-gravity feature they installed." Through their bond, Clark felt her playful desire mixed with genuine excitement about the appointment. Later, he promised, sending her a mental image that made her mercury eyes darken with anticipation. The Galactic Council chambers on New Geneva Station were a far cry from the organic architecture of Nexus Prime. Clean lines of chrome and transparent aluminum created an atmosphere of clinical efficiency, though the view of swirling nebulae through the massive observation windows added a touch of cosmic majesty. As they prepared for their presentation, Lenara adjusted Clark's formal attire, a blend of Earth diplomatic dress and traditional Nexian robes. "Remember when I was just a poor girl on the street, and you were just a kind stranger with a chocolate bar?" "You weren't actually poor," he reminded her, catching her hands and pulling her close. "No, but you were genuinely kind," she replied, pressing against him. "That's what makes this work. Your humanity isn't an act, it's who you are." Their presentation to the council focused on their success with the Kraxan Consortium, but it was their obvious, deep connection that truly captured attention. The way they moved in perfect synchronization, finished each other's sentences, and shared subtle touches that sparked visible reactions in Lenara's bioluminescent skin fascinated the assembled delegates. "Your bond goes beyond traditional diplomatic partnerships," observed High Counselor Renthai, her crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns. "It demonstrates the potential for true synthesis between species." "It started with chocolate," Clark said, drawing surprised laughter from the assembly. "Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness can bridge the greatest distances." Their appointment as special envoys was unanimous, but it came with unexpected complications. The increased scrutiny of their relationship led to intense public interest in their private life. "They want to know everything, Orna," Lenara complained later in their private suite on the station. "How we kiss, how we touch, how we—" She sent him a particularly vivid mental image that made him grateful they were alone. "Let them wonder," Clark replied, pulling her onto his lap. "Some things are just for us." Their new position did require certain adjustments. They had to learn to moderate their public displays of affection, which proved challenging given their constant empathic connection. Every touch, every glance carried the weight of their desire, visible to sensitive species through Lenara's involuntary bioluminescence. The solution came from an unexpected source. The Nexian royal scientists developed a modification to their quarters' environmental systems that would respond to their combined biorhythms, creating an atmosphere that enhanced their private moments while helping them maintain control in public. "It's like having our own private universe," Lenara mused as they tested the system, the room's bioluminescent crystals pulsing in harmony with their passion. Their diplomatic duties took them across the galaxy, but they always found ways to maintain their intimate connection. Sometimes it was as simple as sharing a piece of chocolate in their private moments, a reminder of how their story began. During one particularly tense negotiation with a silicon-based species, Lenara mentally transmitted her amusement as Clark unconsciously reached for a chocolate bar while thinking through a complex problem. "Some things never change," she teased through their bond. "Would you want them to?" He responded, breaking off a piece and offering it to her in full view of the assembled delegates. The gesture, simple as it was, broke the tension in the room. The Silicon delegates, who couldn't eat chocolate themselves, were nonetheless moved by the obvious significance of the ritual to the famous couple. Their personal life became as much a part of their diplomatic arsenal as their formal training. Species that might have resisted traditional negotiations found themselves swayed by the genuine affection and respect evident in Clark and Lenara's relationship. "You've turned diplomacy into an art form," Sovereign Thexnar commented during one of their rare visits home to Nexus Prime. "Though I never expected my daughter's marriage to involve quite so much public display." "Blame your human son-in-law," Lenara replied, her skin glowing as Clark traced patterns on her palm under the table. "His species is remarkably demonstrative." "And your species is remarkably responsive," Clark countered, enjoying the way her bioluminescence intensified at his touch. Later, in the privacy of their chambers, they celebrated another successful diplomatic mission in their own intimate way, their bond allowing them to share every sensation, every emotion in perfect harmony. "I never thought sharing my last chocolate bar would lead to all this," Clark mused afterward, watching the desert moons rise through their terrace window. Lenara's response came both verbally and through their bond, wrapped in waves of love and contentment. The best gifts often come in unexpected packages. The assassination attempt came during a diplomatic gala on Centauri Prime. A plasma burst missed Clark by inches, scorching the crystalline wall behind him. Before the assassin could fire again, Lenara's bioluminescence flared brilliantly, temporarily blinding their attacker while security forces moved in. "Are you all right?" Lenara's mental voice was tinged with both concern and fury as she rushed to his side. "I'm fine," Clark assured her, though his racing heart betrayed his calm exterior through their bond. "Though I think we need to discuss your definition of diplomatic protection." Later, safe in their secured quarters, Lenara's controlled facade crumbled. Her skin pulsed with waves of residual fear and relief as she practically tackled Clark onto their bed, her hands roaming his body as if to verify he was truly unharmed. "Hey," he soothed both verbally and mentally. "I'm here. We're both safe." "They targeted you because of what we represent," she said against his neck. "Our legacy threatens those who profit from division between species." The word legacy hung between them, carrying weight beyond their immediate safety concerns. They had been avoiding the topic, but recent events made it impossible to ignore any longer. "The royal scientists have been researching human-Nexian compatibility," Lenara admitted, propping herself up to meet his eyes. "Father commissioned the study months ago." Clark raised an eyebrow. "Worried about grandchildren already, is he?" "More like fascinated by possibilities." She traced his jawline, her touch sending sparks through their bond. "Our mental connection shouldn't be possible according to conventional wisdom. Yet here we are, linked more deeply than any recorded pair in Nexian history." The implications were staggering. Their bond had grown stronger over time, evolving beyond simple emotional connection into something approaching true telepathy. During their most intimate moments, the distinction between human and Nexian consciousness became almost meaningless. "The scientists believe our children would be extraordinary," Lenara continued, her mercury eyes bright with possibility, "a perfect blend of human adaptability and Nexian perception." "Children," Clark repeated, the word filling their bond with complex emotions. Hope, fear, love, uncertainty. "Assuming you want them," she added quickly, but he silenced her concerns with a kiss that left them both breathless. "With you. Always." Their lovemaking that night had an added dimension of purpose, their shared pleasure amplified by dreams of future possibilities. Through their bond, they shared visions of children with his determination and her grace, her ethereal beauty and his warm humanity. The next morning brought both new security measures and increased public interest in their relationship. The assassination attempt had only heightened their popularity, transforming them from diplomatic curiosities into living symbols of interspecies unity. "The Galactic Council is concerned," Clark reported, reviewing their latest communications. "Not just about our safety, but about the implications of our potential offspring." "Let them be concerned," Lenara replied, her tone regal. "They couldn't stop us from falling in love. They can't stop us from building a family." Their defiance of conventional limitations had already changed galactic politics. The prospect of their legacy, both diplomatic and genetic, promised even greater changes. During a private dinner with Sovereign Thexanar, the topic arose naturally. "The assassins were hired by a coalition of genetic purists," he informed them. "They fear what your union represents." "They fear change," Clark corrected, sharing a knowing look with Lenara. "But change is coming whether they like it or not." "Indeed." The Sovereign's mercury eyes, so like his daughter's, sparkled with amusement. "Though I must admit, when I sent Lenara to test visiting diplomats, I never expected her to bring home a human husband." "The chocolate bar was very convincing," Lenara teased, her hand finding Clark's under the table. Their enhanced security detail now included both human and Nexian officers, trained to work in perfect synchronization, much like the couple they protected. It became common to see them moving through diplomatic functions, surrounded by a coordinated team that demonstrated the same principles of cooperation they advocated. "We're not just building a family," Clark realized one evening, watching Lenara prepare for bed. "We're building a future." She turned to him, her nightgown catching the light like flowing mercury. "A future that started with a simple act of kindness." "Speaking of which," Clark pulled something from his pocket, a perfectly preserved wrapper from that original chocolate bar. "I think it's time we properly displayed this. It's practically a historical artifact now." Lenara's laughter, both mental and physical, filled their bond with joy. "Only you would think to preserve the wrapper from our first meeting." "Hey, I'm a diplomat. We're trained to recognize significant moments." Is that so?" She moved closer, her skin beginning to glow with familiar desire. "And what significant moment would you say this is?" Their bond hummed with shared passion and purpose as they came together. Their love a defiance of biology, politics, and the very forces that would keep their species apart. 5 years after the fateful chocolate bar encounter, Clark and Lenara stood before the newly inaugurated Interspecies Cultural Center on Nexus Prime. The massive structure combined Earth's practical aesthetics with Nexian organic architecture, its crystalline spires reaching toward the twin suns while its foundation remained firmly rooted in the desert soil. "Not bad for a diplomatic revolution that started with a snack," Clark mused, feeling Lenara's amusement ripple through their bond. The center had become the heart of a growing movement. What began as their unique love story had blossomed into something greater, a galaxy-wide revolution in how different species viewed relationships, both personal and diplomatic. Ambassador Davis, Princess Lenara, a young human Andorian couple, approached them, their joined hands displaying the distinctive glow of a newly formed empathic bond. "Your story inspired us to try the bonding ritual." Lenara's skin pulsed with pleased luminescence. "And how are you finding the experience?" "Overwhelming," the Andorian admitted, her antennae twitching with emotion. "But wonderful." Through their own bond, Clark and Lenara shared a moment of pride. Their success had paved the way for other interspecies couples to attempt the ancient Nexian bonding rituals, adapted for various physiologies by the royal scientists. The inauguration ceremony drew dignitaries from across the galaxy, including many who had once opposed their union. Even the Craxan Consortium sent representatives, their once hostile stance softened by years of successful cooperation and cultural exchange. During the reception held in the center's Grand Hall, Sovereign Thexanar raised a toast. "To the power of small kindnesses," he announced, his mercury eyes twinkling, "and to the daughter who was wise enough to recognize true nobility in a simple act of sharing." Later, in a quiet moment between diplomatic functions, Clark and Lenara escaped to their private garden, a perfect blend of earth roses and Nexian crystal flowers. Their bond hummed with contentment as they watched the desert sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues. "I have something for you," Lenara said, producing a familiar-looking package. Clark unwrapped it to find a chocolate bar, but not just any chocolate. This was a new variety developed by joint human-Nexian food scientists, specifically designed to be safely enjoyed by both species. A first of its kind, she explained, her skin glowing with anticipation. Like us. They shared the chocolate as they had shared everything else. Together, their bond amplifying the pleasure of the moment. The taste was neither purely Earth nor purely Nexian, but something new and wonderful. Speaking of firsts, Clark said, drawing her closer, the medical team gave us some interesting news this morning. Lenara's eyes widened as she caught the edge of his thoughts through their bond. You mean, the treatments work? We're going to beat parents. Her joy exploded through their connection like a supernova, her skin blazing with happiness. The news would shake the galaxy, the first viable human Nexian pregnancy, proof that their love could create something entirely new. I hope they have your kindness, she whispered against his lips. And your ability to see the best in people, he replied, pulling her into a kiss that sent waves of color cascading across her luminescent skin. Their passion that night was celebration and ceremony combined, their bond carrying them to heights that neither species alone could reach. In their most intimate moments, they were neither human nor Nexian, but something gloriously undefined. The next morning, they attended the center's first official function, a seminar on interspecies relationships. The attendance exceeded all expectations, with couples from dozens of species seeking guidance and inspiration. Tell us how it began, one attendee requested. The real story, not the official version. Clark pulled out the preserved wrapper of that first chocolate bar, now carefully framed. It began with a choice, he said, to share what little I had with someone who seemed to have nothing, though she turned out to have quite a bit more than expected, Lenara added, drawing laughs from the audience. Their story had become legend, but the truth was better than any myth. It was a testament to humanity's capacity for kindness, to the power of looking beyond appearances, and to the unlimited potential of love unbound by species or convention. As they concluded the seminar, a young diplomatic aide rushed in with news. The Galactic Council had just passed the Interspecies Rights Act, formally recognizing and protecting cross-species bonds and families. Perfect timing, Lenara murmured, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. That evening, they returned to the spot where they first met, now marked with a small crystal monument. Clark pulled out another chocolate bar, breaking it in half. Care to share? He asked with a grin. Always, Lenara replied, taking her portion. Through their bond flowed all the love, hope, and possibility that had started with a similar gesture years ago. They stood together in the desert twilight, their bond humming with shared joy, their future bright with promise. What had begun with one man's simple kindness had grown into a movement that was reshaping the galaxy, one relationship at a time. And somewhere in the vastness of space, countless other couples were beginning their own stories, inspired by the human who shared his last chocolate bar with a poor alien girl, unaware she was a princess, and unaware that their love would change the universe.